If you enjoy this content, please take a moment to rate and review it. Your feedback will greatly impact our ability to reach more people. Thank you.
All right, I'm back.
Yes.
You need me.
No question about
that. Okay, good show last week.
Yeah, there was a lot to cover.
There's a lot to cover.
A little longer maybe than ideal, but a lot of policy to go through.
Yeah, a lot to cover. I love Emily. She's a dear friend, and I think that she is largely responsible for my understanding of the moment that we're in. She's the person closest to me that talks to me the most about the right. She's not apolitical.
Yeah.
She has a point of view. And she's an analyst, but she's kind of a clean analyst insofar as she's not tied to anything. No one has put money behind her. You know what I mean? So
she's an independent researcher.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
What you see is what you get. And so I appreciate that about her. I've been on her show on Hedge Eye several times.
Yeah.
And she's been on Insight with us.
Yeah.
Many, many times. And I talk to her, when things are normal, weekly.
Yeah.
Right. And
she's been on this show.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She comes on quarterly to kind of talk about policy. This was different.
Yeah.
This was different.
Yeah, this was not a quarterly one. This was a guest host.
This was different.
I chose her to guest host because of the inauguration and all the executive orders.
Of course. And she would be very knowledgeable about those things. But she's not apolitical.
Yeah.
And, I think that the thing that we have done on this show is tried as best we can to take the investor's perspective. And I would say the investor's perspective is fairly apolitical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think the investor's perspective is free markets. And then we each bring our own personal aspects into it at times so that it's not like, it's not CNBC, right?
Yeah.
We do bring our own personal aspects into it.
And then in healthcare, there's regulation and reimbursement. So if something is being reimbursed at a high rate, I'll invest in that.
Yep.
Because it's my job to make money in that space. And whether I agree with the policy or not, I think I'm mostly a capitalist versus right or left.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I think the thing about last week, in addition to it being the the inauguration, it was also a very, very intense week.
Yeah.
The speed of action, the number of executive orders that came out. And, the thing about that is it was both well planned, meaning everything was buttoned up and ready to go, and also moving that quickly. It's impossible to not break things, right?
Yeah.
It's just impossible. I don't care who's doing it.
Well, Trump and the Republicans called it shock and awe. They wanted to come out of the gate
shock
with
and awe,
a
flood the
huge
zone,
amount
all
of
the things that people are sort of saying about it, right? And by the way, just for listeners, you might want to skip this section if you just want to listen to the show to kind of get, because I'm going to talk for a minute before I say let's dig in. So, it was a long week for a lot of people. I went to UVA. A bunch of my friends live in the DMV area. Several of them either work for the government or are working in a way that they're very closely related to the government.
Yeah.
I'm an Aspen Institute Health Innovators Fellow. Many of the fellows run nonprofits or are working in tight coordination with the government. I mean, isn't that the thing about healthcare, right?
Yeah.
How do you avoid actually working with the government, right? It's
everyone is working with the government.
Yeah.
They pay half the bills.
How do you avoid doing that, right? I'm on the board of HFMA, and largely focuses on health systems, not exclusively, but largely focuses on health systems, and not just for profit or nonprofit, but certainly in America, there's a lot of nonprofits.
Yeah,
a lot of nonprofits, and I think
they take care of millions of people,
take care of our communities.
Yeah,
and I think when we've been on this show, we have tried to respect the unique challenges that nonprofit health systems have. They have different payer mixes. They may not have the most ideal markets. They can't always pick and choose. They certainly have a larger burden for charity care, et cetera. And those things are all real.
Yeah.
I have people in my Health Innovators Fellows class who I know personally. I know what they're doing. I know the work that they're doing and the innovations that they're doing. And, they are taking care of the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. And that actually doesn't matter if it's an academic medical center, one of the large super regionals, or like a safety net. I know people working at all three, and I can say in all three cases, they're doing that. Right. So I think, given the intensity of last week, what I noticed about the show was that, I think I noticed my role on the show. I think is the most important point. And
we were missing your role.
Yeah, and I would just sort of apologize to the listeners for not being here. I couldn't help it.
Yeah.
But I would say I would apologize to the listeners for me not being here, because I don't want anyone to audit themselves, silence themselves, edit themselves. I want Emily to come on here and say who she is. But I would have fucking called her on her shit. You know what I mean? When she said things that were her opinion and not like real. I always do. You know what I mean? I always do. And we managed to still be incredible friends with that, right? You know what I mean? We are able to disagree well.
Yeah.
We're able to disagree really well,
And leave Emily to the side. I think you and I don't agree on everything.
No.
And
that's why there was no checking, because the two of you are aligned on a lot of this stuff.
Right. That's the problem.
That's why there's no checking on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So probably my natural bias is
you're aligned with her.
Yes.
Which I'm not mad at.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at that.
Right. Well, I'm not saying you're mad, but the show is more balanced when you're giving the other point of view.
1,000%.
And I probably should have done a better job stepping into that role, but there were so many policies. It was hard to keep up with all of it. So I was mostly trying to navigate the show in general.
I'm not litigating your performance here, because I think I listened to it. I listened to it. I actually thought it was a good show, because I know you both, right? Yeah. And I didn't agree with everything you both said, but I did think it was a good show. I learned a lot. I thought it was a good show, but I felt on a week like last week, it was an important show for me to be on.
Yeah, and
I wish I was on it. I wish I was on it. So I think I didn't quite understand the importance of my role here, and I got a better understanding of it. I wanted to read you a quote.
Okay.
This is a quote from Toni Morrison from a speech that she did at a commencement for a college graduation. The very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, and you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing. So right now, in the everything that's wrong with America is diversity moment, that's what me and people like me are experiencing. We're not asking for any sympathy on it. And I would say we probably are a little bit kicking ourselves for getting a little too excited about the potential of this country actually like making real progress. I am not delighted that I made changes to Jumpstart Nova in 2023 so that I could have peace last week.
Right.
Because I knew it was coming.
You could see it coming.
I knew it was coming. And I got a lot of I don't know. People were disappointed in that, in the decision that I made to change the mandate. You know, I mean, we had some LPs, you know, that were really not happy about that. But, you know, if it's one thing that's been kind of burned into me from day one is like survive to live to see the next day. I think what's going to be different this time, my sense what's going to be different this time is I think there's going to be a little bit less trying to prove the next thing. I think that we're going to trust people on their word this time and take them for who they are and what they say they are. I think that's the right thing to do. When I was in the Aspen Institute fellowship process, they make every fellow go through this 1 week called the Executive Seminar. And they give you this book. It's called The Executive's Compass. And I have to be honest, like the 1 week we did the executive seminar, it's different than the rest of the fellowship because you're only with a subset of your fellows. And then you have like other people that are so it's not quite the bonding experience that the actual fellowship is, because the fellowship, it's like, A, we're all in the same area. We're all doing healthcare stuff. And B, we're spending like 4 weeks together as opposed to this 1 week. But interestingly, I will say this was probably, of all the things we did, one of the most powerful things I took away from the Aspen Institute fellowship. And it's this framework, right? It's this framework for an executive to sort of understand the tensions and the trade-offs in society. And so it's a compass, and the poles are north and south is liberty and equality, and then east and west is efficiency and community, right? And so once I saw this, I understood politics so much better, and I understood how difficult it is to be in the center, and why you're always kind of getting pulled in these different directions, right? So right now we're very, very much up and to the right. We are in the liberty efficiency quadrant. Right. That's where we are. I don't think we'll be there forever. I think the pendulum swings. I think we go through cycles in humanity. And honestly, like having this framework is really helpful for me to sort of understand the much, much bigger play that my short, precious life fits into. You know, it's just one wave of it. And I'm getting to experience what happens when, you know, humanity moves from community and equality to liberty and efficiency. You know what I mean? In these kinds of swings. And so having that perspective, reading the classics, it does provide some comfort, you know, to sort of not feel like a moment like this is so existential. You have the opportunity to get perspective on what came before. That's right. And see where your life and these times fit into the overall. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And so and at the same time, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an investor, I basically control my own time. You know, I'm really minimally impacted by the things that happened over the course of the last week compared to many people that I'm very, very close to, you know, and so, you know, I think I just wanted to apologize to any of our listeners who felt that for the very, very large number of people in this country, we need to remember to the victor go the spoils, and politics are competitive. And the truth is, Donald Trump and the Republicans won, and so they get this moment, and that's just how this works. That is just how this works. Okay, they get this moment, they won. Okay, and so we live with that. We have to live with that. But an assertion that it's right, that it's fundamentally right. I certainly didn't do that for the Biden administration all throughout, the time when we were talking about Gensler's weird issues with crypto or Lena Khan and the FTC. I called that one as I saw it. I'm going to do the same here. Do I think move fast and break things is a great way to run government, even if your goal is to do something great for future generations, like cut the deficit? I think that's a worthy ambition. Absolutely. Do I think move fast, break things, and blame every single thing on diversity is a good way to go about being a unifier of this country? Of course not. Of course not. And that was missing. So, look, I'm here to be an investor. I'm here to be an investor. I understand the nature of competition, and I understand that this is Donald Trump's moment, and he earned it. He won it. And quite frankly, the Democrats did him nothing but favors in terms of the way that they managed their campaign. And historically, that has been my team. And so I feel that I can get mad at the way that they ran their plays. I think their playbook was awful, for sure. But Republicans won, and now we will see how this goes. We'll see how this goes. But my role here, your job is not to change. My role is to just show up. And I'm saying that because I'm not going to show up for the next 2 weeks. Right? I'm going to be traveling. I'm not going to be able to show up. But I think what makes this show valuable is that we are not, we're not dragged around by our collars by anybody, and we have our opinions, and we're not just go along guys, and we are trying to objectively figure out what the hell is going on in this crazy world of healthcare and the economy and artificial intelligence. I think that's what we're trying to do here. Not assert that certain things are right. And that was the problem that I got with last week's show. And that's exactly what I expect from Emily, because that is consistent with who she is and what she does. The problem was not her. The problem was I wasn't here. So, that's me owning it.
I think that makes sense to me. I want to respond. I think my personal view is that the right thing is to give all people kind of a fair playing field to live their life and perform, and there needs to be like an equal opportunity for advancement and success. And we do not have that in this country. And there's no question that Black and brown and lower income and all kinds of people
and
women do not have an equal opportunity. They don't. And so DEI.
But there are many people today
who would claim they do.
Who would say they've had a superior opportunity over the last 4 years.
Yeah, but that's not correct. Many people would say that.
That is the dominant vibe right now. No, there's no question. That's the dominant vibe right now.
Well,
and I agree. I hear you.
The Republicans won, and specifically Trump ran on really fears around illegal immigration and this common perception among middle-class white people that they're not getting ahead because of some DEI program. I don't think that is true. But he did a good job selling that story. And middle-class and lower-class people of every type are suffering. And so a lot of them are suffering now. I think we needed you last week. And also, I just want to say to listeners that I could have done a better job being more neutral or trying to do a better job. But I didn't do that.
I thought you did just fine. I thought you did just fine. So anyway, that was 20 minutes. And we got a lot of stuff to cover. And I wouldn't quite call it an ambush, but I did not give you any prep that we were going to do this.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it wouldn't have been honest to the listeners if we had rehearsed it ahead.
Yeah.
And part of what I like about this show is that you and I bring very different life experiences, very different points of view, different political aspects. And at the end of the day, we're both founders and GPs and trying to find a way to make healthcare better and make money for our LPs. And we've worked together for a long time. And so you know that I am trying to do well in investing and be a decent person, even though I screw up and make mistakes. And that ends up making a better show and more honest discussion around healthcare issues. And it doesn't work if you're not here. But we have to, I mean, I'll have a guest next week. It won't be very controversial, probably.
Look,
that week was very controversial.
That week. It was on that week.
Right.
On that week.
When everything and the money was all frozen and all, it was a very difficult political week.
Yeah. So for any of the listeners who might be upset with what I just said because you believe that DEI is wrong, and any of those things, I just want to say you don't have to worry, because I know, like Tony said, there will always be one more thing. Mm-hmm. And don't worry about me. None of this is necessary. None of this is necessary. I will be spending my time talking about the economy and healthcare and AI on this show. So don't worry. Yeah. Don't change the channel. Don't unsubscribe. Don't worry. You don't have to do that. But just know where my head's actually at. Yeah. And with that, let's dig in. All right, U.S. GDP grew 2.5% in 2024, but slowed slightly in the final quarter. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, 2.5% growth is pretty good given the size of our economy and how it feels, which is not really that good. And the consumer is still spending a lot. So it's a good news story. I'm not sure it really, I mean, I just said it. It doesn't translate in the way that I would expect this kind of growth economy to translate.
Right.
But that's the facts.
Well, it's because inflation is sticky, right? So it's still harder to run a business because labor costs are high and supply costs are high. It's still harder to get out of the grocery store without spending $100, right? So it's like growth should feel good and like things are getting easier, and they're not getting easier. You know, and that's the trick of inflation.
Yeah, right.
That's the trick of inflation, right? But you got to have growth. I mean, you don't want inflation and negative growth. Like that's like a really bad situation. Yeah. So at least we are continuing to grow. That's making things somewhat sustainable. So Powell pissed Trump off. He came out and said that well, inflation is sticky.
Yeah.
I don't think I should be cutting. It was, what was it? 12-0. Like nobody voted for a cut on the FOMC. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's always pretty close to unanimous, but I think Powell's right. I mean, there was no reason to cut this month. I don't think he should cut all year. I mean, we have inflation over the benchmark.
Well, he's data driven, so you shouldn't make a decision about the whole year when it's January.
Yes.
You never know. Never know. We live in the fastest times I think maybe that have ever existed.
I mean, the government spending is a big part of the economy.
Right.
And so if they really do cut whatever, $1 trillion that will come out of GDP.
That's right.
That would dampen inflation. And so if all of that happened, which none of it has right now, then maybe, Powell would reevaluate the data. But he should not. I think the Fed chair being fairly independent of the president is a good thing.
Oh, it's a very good thing. It's a very good thing. I mean, in fact, maybe just a little commentary. I think it has been good for me to watch in real time, while the president does have incredible powers, even more so now kind of with this Supreme Court, there's tremendous power in the office of the president. It has been interesting to watch all of the counterbalances to the executive power, you know, to watch the Fed, to watch the judicial system, to watch the legislators, and just kind of see it all in very real time, see things get rolled back that were, you know, maybe overly aggressively rolled out, right? So it's just been nice to see that the American system does have a lot of thoughtfulness in it. It really does. So anyway, I just want to say that. Trump Media announces new push into finance to support the Patriot economy. The company is investing $250 million into crypto and other investments to kickstart a broader financial services venture. Did you and Emily talk much about the Trump coin?
We didn't.
Okay.
No.
I was about to say, I don't remember that.
This is our first crypto story I think we've ever done on the show.
First true crypto story?
I think so.
All right, we got to start adding more crypto for real. Because crypto's legitimate now.
I mean, we were talking about it offline.
Yeah.
When the president, the incoming president, 3 days before inauguration, and the first lady both sell a crypto token.
Yep. Solana meme coin.
To monetize their notoriety, their fame, or however you want to frame it. The coin doesn't do anything.
No. Today
it doesn't do anything.
Today.
That signaled to me that I could do that. My portfolio companies could do that.
That was the point of it.
Anyone, if the president can do that, anyone can do it. Now, whether I want to or not is a whole different
topic.
But the Overton window, or what is allowed or possible or within the regulatory apparatus of the United States, is wide open now.
Yep.
And so I think we need to start covering crypto stuff because it's a viable pathway.
Yep.
Now, it has pros and cons, which we'll cover over the next multiple shows, I'm sure.
Yep.
You and I have been through it for a long time, but this is sort of the first thing to then follow up on after Trump launched his Trump coin. And have you seen the cartoonish version of the meme Trump? He's like, buff and cut. It's ridiculous, crazy.
Sure.
Now the company that he is behind, Trump Media.
Yeah.
And I think his son runs it.
Yeah.
So he's technically not running it, but it's his son. It's all his money.
And his brand.
And his brand. They're investing $250 million additional into other crypto assets.
Yeah,
so they're just doubling down and keep going.
The $250 they made that weekend.
Yes.
Because they got the whole World Liberty Financial bit, right?
No, I don't know that.
You don't know World Liberty Financial is?
No.
That's their other crypto business. That's like really Don Jr. and Eric's crypto thing.
Yeah.
So the Trump coins, I think, are related to that. We probably need to actually spend some time researching that before we make crazy statements. But
they have a lot of assets already in crypto. That's what you're
lot.
Saying. Yeah,
they have a lot of assets in crypto, and it's. I think the important point that you brought up here. First of all, I think this is smart. Okay, I think the idea of Trump leveraging crypto and actually supporting the Patriot economy. It makes all the sense in the world. He is the Schelling point for the Patriot economy.
Yeah.
He's got surrogates, which are Fox News, Alex Jones, Newsmax.
Yes.
Right. He's got surrogates, but why the hell would you seed the Patriot economy, which is fundamentally your brand? You are the Schelling point for it. Why would you seed it to them? They're all making all this money, selling all this, off the grid, build your bunker, blah, blah, blah. He should be the one making all the money off of that. So this is really smart. That's one point. The next point is that, yes, we are in a new era of capital aggregation and allocation, a very new era. Thank you for pushing me to listen to the latest All In episode, because I told you I had to take a break because Sachs was driving me nuts. But like, it was actually really good to hear him at the end of the episode, right after being in the Oval Office, getting the executive order signed for the working group. To like, just hearing it directly from him was very good, right? And listen, crypto is going to be very, very legitimate. I mean, Trump went to Davos and said, like, we're going to be number one in the world in crypto.
Right.
And I'm sorry, A, I can't be mad at that. And B, like, it just makes me so upset that the Democrats gave this away. I'm convinced, I'm serious. I'm convinced this was the biggest unforced error. And I think later on there will be like documentaries, books, reasons.
Yes.
I think this was the unforced error that, because crypto is such a niche, weirdo thing, like the general public does not understand what a big role this thing played in this last election cycle.
I mean,
this was such an unforced error.
I was in the audience when Donald Trump in Nashville at the Bitcoin conference addressed the crowd, and he was very supportive of Bitcoin and crypto. And I left and bought a bunch of Bitcoin because it was clear. It was clear that and the reason is he raised a ton of money an hour before that speech from people that had a lot of crypto assets and want clarity about what's allowed and what's not allowed. And I think that's absolutely right. That was in maybe June. If I knew about it, the Dems definitely knew that he had raised $25 million in an hour and done this speech.
They couldn't turn around Operation Choke Point 2.0. You can't undo that. You can't undo it. Like it would have taken the unforced error was not appealing to the crypto crowd in the summer of 2024. The unforced error was Gary Gensler and Elizabeth Warren, period.
Yeah.
Period. That had nothing to do, like, when you think about, when I think about this election, right? And maybe let me blow it out a little bit. When I think about politics, right? When I think about politics, I generally boil it down to two big things: the economy and social issues. Now, I know there's also geopolitics and a bunch of other things in there, but like, as a citizen, I generally break it down into those two buckets.
That's probably how most people vote.
The economy and social issues, right? And you could see, because of the setup of the Supreme Court, that the social issues were in a very tenuous spot. Like, we're on the line to roll back the country on social issues, basically to the 60s and probably before that. Like, that's where we're kind of headed here. Okay.
And that was a 30-year project of the Republicans.
That's right.
And it could have been more easily stopped in year one, but by the end, it was hard.
That's right. You knew that was, so there was no alignment on that. There was no alignment on that. Anyone who was strong on either side of that fence, you weren't winning. Like, you weren't going to move to the other side. The swing vote was on the economy.
Yeah.
The swing vote was on the economy. There was no swing vote on social issues. I'm sorry. People who believe what they believe, believe what the hell they believe. Yeah. The swing vote was on the economy. And the Dems ran a piss poor playbook on the economy. They just did. Like, you can't give them the credit for the inflation stuff. You got to give Powell the credit for managing the inflation stuff. You know, all of the regulatory environment stuff, like listening to Mark Andreessen literally say the moment when he decided to back Trump, like,
Yeah.
He A60, it's like we watched it happen. We watched them like roll out this manifesto and we were like, what the hell's going on? And I'm watching Ben Horowitz, who like started a venture thing with Nas. I'm like, what the hell is Ben Horowitz doing writing a check to Trump?
Right.
You know, it was because of the regulatory environment and their economic policies. So literally you sent the rich people who were like career Democrats and were willing to just keep on backing you. You sent them to this guy.
Through Operation Choke Point.
Yes,
Yeah.
You sent them to this guy. You know, Joe Biden excluding Elon Musk. Listen, for whatever you think about him, the idea that you're going to exclude Elon Musk from
electric vehicle,
like convening these kinds of things, the making of unnecessary enemies and the demonizing of billionaires. You gave up the social issue war. You gave it up. You know, and now you forget about it. Like that is what it is. We're all gonna suffer that for the next 4 to 12 years. I mean, we'll see how long this run goes. But it's gonna be a long one. It's gonna be a long, hard one, even if it is just 4 years. And you gave it up on unforced errors on the economic side of the ledger. It wasn't the woke stuff. You didn't lose on the woke stuff.
And crypto is not a Republican or Democratic thing. It's a technology. It's like saying I don't like the internet.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what happened with Biden and Elizabeth Warren, but he ceded a whole bunch of power to her.
Dude.
Maybe there was some deal. I don't really know how it went, but she did a bunch of things to try to protect Americans, but they didn't work. And it wasn't helpful.
Yeah. And they weren't where we are as a country. Like we're not anti-innovation.
Right.
We're just not, you know? So anyway, I feel like I went on a huge diatribe there. I didn't mean to, but this to me, I look at this and I go, yeah, this is smart. This is really smart. He should do this, you know?
And he has a venture capitalist, David Sachs, running the crypto and AI policy.
And David's good.
And he's good.
Yeah, and David's good.
And they are going to do whatever they can do to make crypto markets reasonably open, transparent, fair. There'll be some kind of rules.
And Vic,
but
am I mad at that?
No, I wouldn't think so. It's great.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Like.
And so it's a positive thing for the economy, for business growth. And why do we want companies? I mean, you and I both know companies that moved abroad because they couldn't do what they wanted to do in the U.S.
Totally. And they're all going to come back.
Yes.
They're all going to come back. That income tax thing that Eric Trump talked about on X, where like if you buy a U.S. crypto, there's zero taxes on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's brilliant.
It's brilliant. It's so this stuff is. It's like I'm sorry, man. Their economic ideas are better.
Well, I think the Dems have to have a bench of people that can do better, and I don't know. I mean,
well, it's not entirely clear to me because what I will tell you is what I see in the post-election sort of Dem circles is a lot of what there was in the 2016, except for now there's blue sky, so you're not seeing it out and about because everyone's fleeing X. They're going to blue sky.
Yeah.
If you go on blue sky, it's just a lot of documenting all the Trump stuff and being really, really mad about it. Mm-hmm. But any real self-aware post-mortem of like, where did we go wrong? I have not seen that yet. I've not experienced that yet. There's still just a lot of pointing to Trump and talking about like how terrible he is and how bad he is. And not an acknowledgement that this is a competition and you have to win. And where did you fail to win? It's a race. They literally call it a race.
Right.
Like,
Right.
don't act like you're owed anything. You have to compete and you have to win. Why didn't you win? Right? Where is any assessment of that? If I compete in jiu-jitsu and I lose, I don't watch it right away. But once I'm emotionally okay, I have to watch it and see where I sucked.
Yeah.
And like what I have to do to not suck anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling you, I haven't seen that yet. I've just seen a bunch of resolve and things of that nature, you know.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's hard to be the incumbent and be the change. So, I mean, I think Kamala had a lot of difficulty in, she couldn't distance herself that much from the administration she was part of, but she also needed to say the economy needs to be fixed and I'm the one to fix it. And so,
Vic, can I ask if we can pull an audible and pass all the VC deal stuff?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I do want to talk about
a bunch of companies raised money.
Yeah, a bunch of companies raised money. I do want to talk about the General Catalyst.
Yeah.
Selling stakes, because this is something we've been talking about, which is General Catalyst is not a VC firm.
Yes.
And Axios, Dan Primack covered them, and they are selling stakes of the holding company. Mm-hmm. So these would be like their super GP stakes.
Yeah.
And they're selling it because they're a holdco. They're a conglomerate. I don't know what they are, but they're not a VC anymore. You know.
Well, I mean, when I say the word or the two words VC, I think of a couple $100 million fund with 3 to 5 partners making kind of high growing company, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million investments. That's kind of what I imagine. And then Axios does a great job digging into this. They had, in the last 12 months, they've raised $8 billion in venture capital funds. Mm-hmm. That's not the scale that I normally think of for venture.
No, of course not.
And then go down, because I'm not going to get it right.
It's more like a small cap PE.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's a small-ish, not even that small PE firm.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they have Hatco, which is the entity that they spun up to buy the entire hospital in Ohio.
Right.
That's, maybe some funds are invested in it, but that's a separately owned entity inside the holding company. And then they talk about here, they sold a stake in the holding company to this thing, Peter Show Partners, that was part of Goldman Sachs, for $200 million in 2018. So as we have been talking about and just sort of observing, they haven't been behaving like a regular VC for several years.
Right.
Maybe part of what drove this is they bought that position back from Peter for like $700 million. So whatever that is, 8 years later, they're buying it back. And so they are then selling positions to several large organizations, probably to like take that ownership back, but then redistribute it again.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And probably capitalize a build out of their core operating business.
Right.
To better support all the crazy businesses they intend to support over the long term.
Yes.
Which is much more of a PE play, but it's like an operating business. You know, it's more of an operating business.
There's a thing that's emerging that I don't have it fully formed yet, but we talked about Andreessen Horowitz a minute ago around the crypto stuff. They're the same way. They're a big operation. I don't know how many funds they have.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of operations. When they invest in a company, they bring a whole bunch of support and tools and people. And they really tried to upgrade and redesign the venture model. And General Catalyst is, I think that's where they are competing. They're still doing innovation, new things, growth. It's not private equity in the sense of pretty stable that we layer debt on and try to get financial engineering.
Right.
But it's a different animal than the funds we run.
Right.
Certainly.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for letting me skip over that section. RFK Jr. backs vaccines and Trump's agenda in Senate testimony. Did you watch any of this?
Yeah, I watched day one, almost all of day one.
Okay.
I didn't watch day two.
It's a bit of a circus.
It's a
bit of a circus.
hard forum. I don't know why the Senate runs it like that.
It's a bit of a circus. I mean, like, I don't feel like it has been this way in the past. I mean, I think there is something to the nature of the picks here.
It's the nature of the picks and the environment that we started the show off with.
Yes.
It's basically a 50-50 Senate. So the committee is one person more than 50-50,
right.
but it's basically
Right.
50-50, and they all have equal time. And so you get this, whipsaw thing where the Democrat will be basically talking for 4 of the 5 minutes about the points they want to make and pretty aggressive. And then Robert Kennedy Jr. says something, but they're sort of interrupting each other and just trying to create sound bites, is what I think.
I mean,
and then you get the Republican, just like a softball question.
Yeah.
And you're back and forth.
Well, one of the things, both in RFK and also with Kash Patel, maybe even more with Kash Patel, but RFK, with Bernie Sanders, they were not afraid to punch back. They were not afraid to punch back. And that tells me they've whipped up the votes already. That tells me that they're getting confirmed. Trump has whipped up the votes already on these. I know the Hegseth thing had a different kind of tint to it, just with the DUIs and the alcohol and the sexual abuse allegations. Yeah. That one kind of felt like a bridge too far, and I think it was probably harder to get McConnell and a couple of the other ones to go along on that one. But I think RFK and Patel and Tulsi Gabbard are a lock already. I don't think there's going to be any last minute kind of theatrics. JD Vance coming down to have to put his vote in for those three. Did you see Kash Patel talking to Amy Klobuchar?
I did not see it. I like Amy Klobuchar though.
Yeah, I mean, she said something to the tune of, I'd love to have 5 hours to talk with you, and he said, you got 2 minutes. I mean, and it was said just like I said it, in a very you're not in control here.
Yeah. Well, I think that's right. It's what I've heard is that the Trump administration is pulling any stops out to just push this across the finish line. They're going to primary people if they even question it. And
totally. Did you see the Nicole Shanahan video?
No.
So she put a video out naming names, saying, if you vote against RFK Jr., I will primary you. Mm-hmm. And she was like, and keep in mind, I'm the person. I mean, she took a little bit maybe more credit than she should have, but she talked about how she spent her money in Georgia and got Warnock and Ossoff in. So she was like, hey, listen, this is not a partisan thing, but I do put my money into markets to win these races, and I will have revenge if you vote against Robert Kennedy here. So and named names. Name names. So
I mean,
we're just in a different time, man. We're just in a different time,
and we'll talk about it later. I mean, when we get to the hymns thing, as we talk about, I mean, people are frustrated about how much of the healthcare system is trying to help people with chronic disease, but not really having that much success.
Yeah,
and I think Robert Kennedy is at least talking a good game about food and let's try to right-size science and get people to do, research that will be helpful. I don't know. I mean, it's all the vaccination stuff, I think, is not what's going to be focused on. But it's a really an emotional issue on both sides. But I don't know.
Yeah. Basically talked about that point. We'll put it in the show notes. The Kaiser Family Foundation put out a really good sort of continually being updated overview of President Trump's executive actions on global health. So is there anything in particular what you want to point out here, or just that needs to go in the show notes?
Yeah, I think it's good in the show notes, and it's good to have as like a reference document. It's long.
Yeah, agree.
And there's so many, and it's hard to know like how much is grandstanding to the base and how much is going to really like be implemented over the next 4 years. I just think we don't know.
Yeah.
But they do a good job summarizing it.
And they're regularly updating.
Yeah.
They're tracking it. So I think it's an important link for the show notes. Okay, this is in the policy section, but OpenAI launches ChatGPT Gov for U.S. government agencies. I mean, this is the continuation of the fun tiff between Elon Musk and Sam Altman. Elon definitely has the stronger position as it pertains to the Trump administration, to MAGA in general. Him owning and controlling X is a massive, massive point of leverage for him. X is back in favor. Advertisers are coming back to the platform.
Yeah.
But OpenAI is strong. OpenAI is strong. And of course, with the history there between Sam and Elon on OpenAI, Elon is a co-founder of OpenAI. Right?
Yeah.
Because of that history. So I think the fact that OpenAI has very quickly, positioned with Trump first on Stargate, and now, following that up very quickly with a government version of ChatGPT, and makes sense because ChatGPT is the brand. I doubt there's going to be a Grok for government, anytime soon that will get the purchase brand wise that ChatGPT would.
Yeah, I think that's right. The OpenAI has worked really hard to collaborate with the federal government. When it was Biden, they were in there, and now they're there with Trump. I think it's part of their corporate strategy. And they're the first brand. They're the brand that everybody knows. And I think they have challenges as far as like how they make their business make money. But one of the ways to make money is to sell a bunch of seats to the U.S. government.
Right.
And put in controls and structure and things that other AI companies haven't bothered to do. I think it's smart. I don't know if it's going to be the best tool 3 years from now, but
right now
they might sell the government. And then their partnership with Microsoft gives, the government's only going to buy from Microsoft, Google, or Amazon.
That's right.
Like, they're not going to buy from Grok just because it's too. Maybe Elon would be different.
That's wrong. But they will buy from Grok.
They're not going to buy from some startup that isn't in the White House.
Yeah, and there's no reason why OpenAI shouldn't use their first mover advantage to set this up and go.
They
right?
should. Yeah.
And of course, this was not possible in the Biden administration because the executive order basically had a bunch of. I don't even know if you want to call them working groups, but it was like there was a lot of discussion that needed to happen. There was not going to be a green light for AI in the government.
Right.
So, that's one of the things we do need to point out is this was only possible in a regime that would totally give a green light to AI. Right. So, I think that's important. Financial Times, Trump's Treasury pick, Scott Bessent, pushes universal 2.5% tariff plan that would rise each month. So month over month, bumping up the tariffs to 2.5%. Bessent's pretty serious about, lowering the deficit. And that's kind of his primary charge. And he seems to be backing Trump's plan here. And again, I just think people need to know. I mean, This guy hasn't done everything in the world, but he's a pretty smart guy. He's pretty smart, guy when it comes to economy and this billionaire hedge fund guy, and he's backing this plan. So I think it's going to be interesting. Look, I certainly on the left, all the people that I know on the left, there's a lot of poking at the tariffs bit. But I will say I never hear any of them actually talk about addressing the deficit and the severity of the problem we have with our deficit today. Normally what they will do is they will play a what about game there and kind of say, both the Republicans and the Democrats have been boosted. Look at how much Trump spent in 2000.
That's all true.
They'll kind of do that, but they won't actually address that's all history.
Yeah.
Today,
if you wanted to start making progress, what would you do?
If you actually were committed to it and it was a fundamental part of what you were doing, what would you do? What would you do? And there's no answers because there's no even discussion about it, quite frankly. There's no discussion on the left about the deficit at all, right? So this is a place where we're just not in the conversation.
Yeah, and Bessent is going to have to refinance 60% of all the debt in the next 4 years. He's the one that has to sell those bonds into the market. And he's as you said, he's a hedge fund guy. He's a market participant. He knows how competitive that is. And there's a lot of debt when bonds mature, we have to issue new bonds or have the cash to pay them off. And I think he's looking at it and saying, like, we need to bring in some revenue in order to make this progress.
Yeah. And so look, I mean, I'm looking for some real economic analysis on the tariff stuff. I'm tired of hearing just all the people telling me about how tariffs work. I want to see, like, model it out. How does this work in a modeled perspective, and what actually are the implications for U.S.-based businesses? You know, I'm learning more about how tariffs actually work and how in a lot of cases the U.S.-based businesses are the ones who have to pay it. It's kind of more of a disincentive in some cases than anything. You know, when things come in through customs, it's like a lot of U.S. companies would have to pay the tariffs. It's not necessarily the other countries that are always paying them. So I'm just looking for a really educated.
The input products. So like I'm invested in a remote patient monitoring company, and we buy devices from all over, but a lot from China. And so we're a U.S. company, but our input prices are based on buying, devices that we need to do the role of RPM. And so, yes, I mean, it's difficult all around. I think, I'm not going to do it justice, but a lot of trade wars made the Great Depression worse. I think that's pretty established. And tariffs lead to trade wars. So, but that is based on the assumption that America is on, like, equal competitive footing.
It's a different
and I
world.
don't think we are.
It's a different world. Yeah.
Now,
yeah. So,
how much stronger we are, what can we get away with?
Right.
Trump is trying to thread that needle. I mean, we are not going to make the blood pressure cuffs and the pulse ox. We don't have the capacity to make those, or it's going to be multiple years before we can make those.
Yeah, and look, here's another thing people need to understand. I think if you play out, especially looking at the pressure on the American family today, and how, Gen Z is projected to do worse than Gen X. Mm-hmm. I mean, what are you going to keep raising taxes on them to pay for the government?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's going to work either.
Right. So,
you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, but something. I mean,
we have to do something.
Yeah, you and I have run companies,
yeah,
and there are things that a lot of people couldn't necessarily stomach that you have to do when you run a company. You know what I mean? And they're hard, and people don't like them.
Yeah.
But like when you're running a company, sometimes you got to do those things, right? And they're really, really hard, and they are bad, but you got to do them. And to me, this deficit is one of those problems where it's like, I don't know that I want to be just trashing this idea until I understand all the implications of it. And I know that I don't today. I know that I don't. But I know that I applaud the effort to actually try to work on the deficit. Now, I will say, stylistically, Trump's style is not my style. I don't like what comes across to me as cruel. I think manners matter in a civil society. And I think how can you say you're trying to make America healthy again, knowing that our biggest issue over the last 5 years has actually been behavioral health and mental health. And of course, these things are going to create mental health issues. This shock and awe is not going to be good for people's mental health. So, there's that issue, right, that I have that's just so obvious to me, but okay, whatever.
I think that, and it may just be because I spend a lot of time thinking about this, but I think there's a lot of business people, investors, venture capitalists, CEOs in and around the Trump administration, or traders. And Elon certainly bought Twitter, now X, and he came in and did what you and I would call a turnaround. They were spending a lot of money, and he thought it could be run more effectively. And he made a bunch of difficult choices to cut a bunch of costs and made several clients, advertisers, mad. And I've done that in startups before. Like,
of course,
if it needs to be turned around, there has to be hard decisions. And a lot of times,
that's not why the advertisers
you have to lay people. Right.
That's not why the advertisers were mad, Vic.
Well, but I think well, maybe the analogy doesn't work, but I think
people were mad because he was firing a lot of people very quickly, but not the advertisers.
Okay.
People. Just general public.
Okay. So the point is not the advertisers. He made those changes, and I think JD Vance has. I think Trump probably has seen things like that. I mean, I think a lot of them have that experience in the for-profit investing or business running sector.
Yep.
And I think what you're saying, but I want to say it out loud and see what you think, is that's one thing with a company.
Yes.
And it's different for the country of the United States.
Well, I mean, is it that different? I mean, it's not the doing. It's not the what, it's the how.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the what, it's the how, right? The lack of empathy is not the word I want to use here.
Mm-hmm.
The lack of dignity with which you treat people that are impacted is unnecessary, except if it is fuel to your base. Except if this is literally what your base is driven by. Like if they're driven by the beatdown. Look, I mean, that is what it's like to be on X. I mean, I've figured out how to get my X thing kind of curated to a place where I'm minimally impacted by it. But that's what it's like to be on that platform. It's a hard environment to be in. It's hard. There's a lot of cruelty on that platform. A lot.
I agree with that. I also think hypothetically, if the Trump administration were to let go of 30% of federal employees at some big administration, I'm not sure it matters how they do it. People that lose their job will be mad. Now, it's obviously, you can do it, you can throw salt in the wound and do it really aggressively and meanly. And what I would say to that is, I think a leader should lead the base, not cater to the worst aspects of the base. But I don't know that Trump is that leader.
It's funny, right? I mean, because it is a question. It is a little bit of a question. Is this actually how he wants to be? And I think a lot of people who have tracked his history would say, yes, this is actually who he is. Or, and maybe it's an and/or, is there an element of audience capture here, right? Where it's like, it's kind of a runaway train now at this point, where this is what the base demands.
Yeah.
Right. This is what the base demands. So it's interesting. It's interesting.
But that's why I think a country is different than a company. Like, let's say that some federal agency has 500,000 workers and they really need 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to right-size it, but those people are going to be in the country. I mean, they're citizens. And so we have to find a way to get them new jobs, retrain them, because if we don't, then we have to take care of them in other ways. And so being the government of a country is different than a company, I think.
For sure.
And I think a lot of the tactics, like the offer for resignation and all those things, were pretty standard turnaround things, but the country is I don't know if it should be run that way.
I'm skipping more stuff.
Okay.
We're gonna do rapid fire through the industry. Cigna set to close $3.7 billion MA sale to HCSC in Q1. We've been watching this for a while. Finally gonna happen.
Yes.
Right. Anything else to say there?
No.
Okay. Walgreens shares dropped 10% after company suspends quarterly dividend amid turnaround efforts. This guy's trying his best to turn this thing around, but he's doing all the hard things. I mean, speaking of like hard things, this guy is in there finding everything he can do to save money. Tim Wentworth.
Yeah. I mean, they're in trouble. Oh. And the entire business, I don't know.
I feel like I need to proactively change my pharmacy. Walgreens has been my pharmacy. Yeah. It's just who I've trusted and everything. But I think I need to. Before it comes from me, I think I need to swap out. I don't know if it's going to be Publix or Kroger, but I probably need to swap out. HCA Healthcare posts revenue gains despite hurricane roadblocks, and the execs addressed Trump policy uncertainties. What did Sam say about the uncertainties?
Yeah, so they are concerned about changes in the regulatory environment. They have a lot of headwinds, and so they met earnings, but they didn't guide well, and they have a lot of headwinds. And
it's hard to guide. I mean, climate change. Yeah, that's pretty hard to predict.
Yes, I mean the hurricanes affected them massively.
Yeah,
and I think inflation is not good,
and inflation's hard,
and so they just are
both on labor and supplies.
Yes,
it's hard,
and so. It's a very well-run company, and they showed HCA in the best light they could. Yeah. And I own HCA, and I think it's going to be fine, but this year is going to be a hard year.
Yeah, it's just hard environment. Right now, this is not about how the company is performing. They'll operate other health systems. Performing incredibly well, but it's a tough environment. All right, so Hims and Hers to advertise weight loss shots at the Super Bowl, and this is probably a really good indicator of the shift in the vibe. This is a very aggressive ad. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's on YouTube, so you can see the ad right now. It's a minute spot, and it's aggressive. It's aggressive.
Yes. And it takes a point of view that I was surprised about.
Well, it tries to get on the RFK train.
Yeah. Yeah. And sort of says the system, or I don't know what they mean by the system.
It's not your fault that you're fat.
It's not your fault you're fat. The system has conspired to do this to you.
Yes.
And Hims and Hers has a solution.
Yes.
We will solve it.
Yes.
And
it shouldn't cost that much.
Yes. It shouldn't cost that much.
It shouldn't cost that much.
Right. And so it's just a really interesting time where the way I see this is they are making a generic version of a patent protected drug
that they had emergency authorization to compound because
it was
of shortage for a period of time. That's no longer the case.
Yes.
But here's the thing, right? It's a wonderfully calculated gamble.
Yeah.
Because of the timing and what's going on.
They can't lose.
It's a wonderfully calculated gamble. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I feel like I'm a little bit surprising myself at some of the things I'm saying are brilliant, but I think it's a sign of the times. Like one of the things I've been saying to myself, just like watching everything, is like, Marcus, you're on your own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're on your own. And I've always kind of directed my life in a way where I kind of felt that. It comes from like not having a credential, right? So basically,
Yeah,
like,
and being a builder and a founder.
yeah. It's like I'm on my own, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't worry. I can't expect anyone to come save me, right?
Yeah.
You know, but this shift that we're undergoing right now in society, certainly different than anything I think I've experienced in my adult life, and it is it's kind of an anything goes environment, right? You know, it's like full contact capitalism. It's the upper right quadrant of the executive compass. You know,
like no prisoners, just win at all costs.
Full on liberty and efficiency.
Yeah,
like that's it. We're full on that way.
Yeah.
So in that environment, right? So again, as an investor and entrepreneur, like I play with the rules on the field, right? In that environment, my objective assessment of this is brilliant.
Yeah, they saw an opportunity where the regulatory bodies are really mad at how much Novo and Lilly are charging for this drug.
Yeah.
And we're not likely to enforce the IP protection. And that's a new thing for me to process. I mean, as a VC, half of our companies have some IP that they are building their company around the concept that will mean something.
Right.
And apparently it does mean something unless you charge too much. But what is too much?
Right.
I mean, you either have intellectual property or you don't have it. And yeah, I don't think we are in shortage for Ozempic anymore, for any of them now. And yet this is continuing.
Yeah. And look, I think at the end of the day, they make a compelling populist argument.
Yes.
Right?
That's what's brilliant about the commercial.
It's a very compelling populist argument. So it's the right message for the time. Right?
Yeah. And the message is, the reason it's brilliant is it's designed to speak to drive customer adoption.
Sure.
But also to talk to Bernie Sanders and Robert Kennedy and whoever else about we're on your side.
Yes.
And that's why it's brilliant.
Yeah. Novo Nordisk's Ozempic gets FDA approval as kidney disease treatment. So while Hims and Hers are going to continue to try to hold their position in the weight loss space, GLP-1s are continuing to expand their clinical viability into multiple areas of chronic disease. And now, I think we're going to see it out there treating people with kidney disease, which is amazing. I mean,
yeah, I think the way I take this is they're expanding the label. They're expanding like what it can be prescribed for.
Yeah, but these are,
but it's weight loss. I mean, if you lose weight, your kidney disease gets better.
It's okay. Yes. Now let's talk about it in terms of healthcare economics and the healthcare industry. Because weight loss is not part of the healthcare industry.
Not yet.
Chronic kidney disease is part of the healthcare industry, right? Like that's a whole very serious subset of the industry. Dialysis and the home health and the on and on and on, and all the stuff around CKD. Hell, it's a fundamental component of Medicare.
Yeah.
End-stage renal disease. So I just think the impact of this on the healthcare industry as we understand it today and some of the incumbents is really
significant.
It's significant.
I mean, the way I see this is they're taking it's like an underlying cause of kidney disease, diabetes, heart disease, COPD.
Right.
I don't know. I could probably name 3 or 4 more. They are all made worse and exacerbated and brought on through someone being overweight.
Right.
And so forever we have treated the symptoms of the particular chronic disease and tried to deal with it. And I think what Novo is now knocking down one at a time is well, if you improve this underlying cause, the downstream effects improve kidney disease. I think the active ingredient is the same in Hims. So Hims is not going to worry about expansion of label. They don't have a label now. So
but also they're not marketing to people with kidney disease. I guess is the point, because that's something that really does need to be done in coordination with a doctor in a much more serious setting.
Yeah,
that's kind of the point.
If you have kidney disease, you have multiple doctors and you're in dialysis every
Hims
week.
and Hers doesn't want to do that.
Right.
Roche had great earnings and growth, and stock was up. Right.
Yes.
Yep. And also Sanofi planning a $5.2 billion buyback. So actually pretty good start to the quarter for some of the biggest brands in pharma.
Yeah, I think there's starting to be a bifurcation of if you actually have a decent pipeline of products.
In weight loss or cancer.
You're doing really well. Yeah, yes, in weight loss or cancer.
In weight loss or cancer, yeah. Into our AI rundown. This is a big one.
Yeah.
Big week. And I listened, and you and Emily actually did cover DeepSeek.
Yeah. You did.
But like the real fallout from DeepSeek hadn't landed
really
yet. Hadn't landed.
Right.
So it was good to listen to you in that timestamp.
Yeah, earlier.
Yeah, before everyone sort of realized, oh, snap, this is like Sputnik moment, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
But let's push that off for a second. OpenAI released Operator. This is their AI agent that can automate different tasks. It's sort of trained on different websites. So whether you're talking about booking, I think like OpenTable is something it can do, and it can probably book a trip for you and things like that. So
yeah, I mean, it's closed, right? So they don't say exactly how it works.
Sure,
but they said that it has this tool of computer use, which is the AI model driving the mouse and the website like a human would, which could really unlock just any website being open.
Yeah.
But the Shopify example, I mean, there's been other agents that have been doing that for 3 months. And so it wasn't like the jaw-dropping demo that
definitely not. Definitely not.
That they've done before.
But here's one thing Sam understands: he needs to keep a drumbeat of PR going. That part is very clear. He understands he can't be on the Steve Jobs schedule.
Yeah,
he can't have one or two big WWDCs a year. Right. He's going to have to very regularly put a new brand name out there with some capabilities.
Yeah,
even if it's not even live yet, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that's smart. OpenAI in talks for huge investment round, valuing it at up to $300 billion. SoftBank would lead $40 billion round for ChatGPT Maker, which would go to this. So that would count for the Stargate, $500 billion.
Yeah. Who is investing in OpenAI at $300 billion?
Well, SoftBank.
Would you invest in that? I mean, how does it justify that? I know there's a lot of momentum and it's a brand.
Well, obviously, this kind of valuation and this kind of investment is not done on discounted cash flows or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
This is a bet that this changes the world.
Yeah, they get to AGI.
Yeah, I mean, if it's at $300 billion today, right, then I think you're probably betting that it pretty easily gets to 3 trillion, right? Like, right? I mean, that would have to be the math.
That
right?
would have to be the math.
That would have to be the math.
I don't see that math. I mean, the only way I see it is if ChatGPT gets to AGI before anyone else, and it really does take off and give them a lot of power.
This feels like a really good time to shift to DeepSeek.
Yeah, because right, I wouldn't be saying that except for
yeah. So a link that we're not going to play here, but an episode of Bankless. We'll put a link in the show notes to this Bankless show. Bankless has been doing some great podcasts lately on the intersection of crypto and AI, it's not for the layman. Let's just say that the level of
deep.
Yes, it's really deep in the understanding of how LLMs actually work. But they point out some really interesting computer science sort of fulcrums that the DeepSeek team focused on, really with the limiting factor being you don't have access to the best chips in the world, right? So it's like, if you don't have access to the best chips in the world and you can't rely on hardware, what would you do in terms of changing your approach on the software development? That's kind of the way I would frame it for the layman.
Right. Necessity is the mother of invention.
That's right.
You don't have the chips, you got to figure out something else.
That's exactly right. So, what to know about China's DeepSeek AI? I would say we don't know much. I would say that we know that it certainly was trained on lesser chips and not the what's the name of the NVIDIA chip? Blackwell or something like that?
Yeah. There's Blackwell, and then also
I think Blackwell's like the big one though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was not trained on those, so we know that. There is speculation that it was trained on OpenAI data, but that's not confirmed. Although there are people running different tests and saying it's behaving very similarly.
Right.
I've seen videos on X that have shown it clean itself up if you ask it questions about the CCP.
Yeah.
Tiananmen Square.
Yeah.
It's like there are things that and this is kind of par for the course with these models. So that's kind of to be expected. But the big thing we do know about is that it's open source. It's released on an MIT license.
Yeah.
And that means anybody can take it and do anything with it commercially. And the end result of that thing is yours.
Yes. And
that's crazy.
Yes.
That's a big deal.
And it's pretty close to as good as OpenAI's models.
Right.
And 40 times cheaper, something like that, order of magnitude. It's massively cheaper. So, and then what's interesting is that because it's open source, the engineers in this country, in my portfolio, and in Silicon Valley and everywhere, are learning from this and now incorporating all of these training techniques that are, maybe a little more nimble and witty. If you didn't have the capital and the chips, you have to figure out something else. But now everyone has those things. And I think that we're really going to see less of a reliance on capital, compute, and data, although more of those things is always better.
Yep.
But there's also going to be like the software and how it is designed really matters.
Yep.
And I'm sort of the opinion that it's going to be essentially free. I mean, I put $2 in DeepSeek. That's what I had to put in to get signed up. And I mean, I use other models too, but so far I've spent 27 cents in the last week. And that's not the frame of reference that these other models are. They're a monthly charge, or if you start paying with a token, it's a lot. And it's at a price point where I don't have to worry about it. Like whatever I do, it's not free, but it's so cheap and it's declining that it's essentially free.
I used Olama, which is a Mac OS open source, like basically wrapper and container.
Right.
And I installed DeepSeek for free and I pay nothing.
Yeah.
And then I used a little web UI and it's got all these configurations, and I've got free DeepSeek running locally on my laptop.
Yeah.
I'm not paying anything.
And then I'm on 3 other sort of platforms, and all 3 added it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Venice added it.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
but like, that's the thing, the variety of ways that you can get to it.
Yes.
The variety of ways you can get to it. OpenAI is the only way to get to ChatGPT.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
To get to O1. That's it. You have to go through OpenAI. DeepSeek, you did it one way, I did it a different way.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And that's a big difference. You know, and if there's
going to be 100 companies that, because it's open source, it's just going to be just in
embedded.
there, and they'll change whatever they want to change, and you can add to it.
I mean, and I think we're going to talk here in a second here about Meta, and how they're kind of doing a bit of a victory lap on their strategy. Although, if I got to pick Llama or DeepSeek, Llama's on the Meta license that is kind of open source, but if I start making money, I got to pay Meta.
Right.
Or the DeepSeek license, which is MIT, and it's mine.
Yeah, Meta's going to dump that stupid license.
They're going to have to. They're going to have to, right? I mean, it's no longer competitive.
No.
The model is no longer competitive.
Yes. And
your license is no longer competitive.
Right.
Okay. So obviously there was fallout in the market, but it was brief. It wasn't anything sort of major. But the storyline here was about NVIDIA and about how maybe the strategy of not getting NVIDIA chips into China drove them to innovate and create DeepSeek, which actually makes Stargate look silly. Right. Because why are you investing all this money in foundational models when open source is going to win? You really need to be building better apps, right? That's
why I wouldn't invest in OpenAI now.
Listen, I totally understand. I'm just saying this was their thinking. Yeah. They believe it's going to get to 3 trillion, clearly. But at Austin on X had a post where he was pointing out NVIDIA's revenue by country and showing that they're pacing for $10 billion a year to Singapore. That's a fourth of all of NVIDIA revenue coming from the very small country of Singapore. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, these are 100% going to China. I don't know that that's actually correct.
There's some businesses in Singapore that probably want it, but a lot of them are going over.
Yeah. I mean, Singapore is a very, very innovative, country, no question. And a lot of great companies have outposts in Singapore. Yeah. So from the West, it's kind of like a great Asian outpost if you're from the West.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's probably safe to assume some percentage of those chips are, in fact, going to China. So I thought it was a funny post. We talked about the Meta engineers seeing the vindication. Meta had another great quarter. Revenue grew to $48.4 billion. It's just unbelievable how this company keeps growing. Truly unbelievable. I mean, is there anything else to say about Meta?
No. Meta's a machine.
21% increase in sales.
Yeah.
$20.8 billion in net income.
And TikTok isn't turned off yet. I mean, if it gets turned off,
20.8 is not getting turned off. That's over. It's not getting turned off. Trump's going to do a deal. Microsoft hits a bump in their cloud computing business.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know where Microsoft's going. I mean, they had a lot of chips on the table with OpenAI, and their cloud business has to be the place now, but they're not really designed the same way that Amazon and Google.
They've got a supply issue here.
Yeah.
Not a demand issue. They've got a supply issue. They can't meet the demand. They can't build the centers fast enough. That's their issue right now. So, I mean, that's a good-ish problem to have, but people are going to find alternatives. I mean, they're not going to wait. They're not going to, a wait list is not.
No one's.
That doesn't work.
I mean, if there's another cloud provider available, which there are, they're not waiting.
That's right. Yeah. So something they'll definitely have to get worked out. Evolutionary scale. ESM3 is simulating 500 million years of evolution with a language model. So this is in the category of DeepMind, right?
Yeah. It's a biology language model. Yeah. So instead of putting together characters into words and paragraphs, they're putting DNA and RNA into proteins and forms of life. And it's pretty interesting. And it's a competitor with DeepMind. I forget what the exact name is, but Google DeepMind has a similar protein folding thing. AlphaFold.
AlphaFold.
Yeah. And then what I thought was interesting is they simulated 500 million years of evolution to see the changes and there's a ton of learning that as a society will get to pull out of that, and a lot of healthcare potential 10 years from now or in the future.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. All right. And the final feel-good story. Good job with this one. Good job with this one. From chalkboards to chatbots, transforming learning in Nigeria one prompt at a time.
This school in Nigeria gave every student an AI tool and a teacher to help them figure out how to use it. And in 6 weeks, I think they made 2 years of learning progress. So incredible progress. And I think all positive. Like letting people get more access to education and improve themselves faster with technology tools, I think is good for everyone.
I mean, listen, if AI can help educate children around the world better, that's, that is such a net positive. Such a net positive, and really exciting, and just confirming that there is an upside to this technology. We think a lot about it in terms of the existing labor force, and not about how, quite frankly, our education systems have been faltering, over the course of the last couple of decades. And so if AI can bolster our education systems globally, and hopefully really in America, that would be amazing.
Yeah. And no matter where you live, if you have access to one of these systems, you have all the intelligence of the entire society right there.
It's amazing.
And then I think it was really interesting. They didn't get the same result because they did a controlled study. They gave it to some kids without the helper, without the human guide.
Yeah.
And they didn't make progress.
Oh, so
you needed a person to help you.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you have experienced. I've experienced. Like, it takes a while to figure out, how do I prompt this in a way that I get what I want out.
Yeah.
And so there's still a role for teachers to motivate kids and inspire them and give them assistance. But then they have the entire world of knowledge as a tool there to explore wherever they want to explore. And I think that's completely positive. Good.
So somehow I think we managed to keep this show shorter than last week's show, but barely. Barely. Okay. So good luck next week. Not doing another marathon show. Yes. And sorry for anyone who felt they needed to scrub past my diatribe.
Yeah, and then for our hardcore listeners that are still listening, we have a great guest, Seema Verma from Oracle Health. I did the interview with her this week. There's a lot of PR hurdles to get through and things, but it was a great talk, and Oracle Health is really going to be powerful. So that's a good one. Probably coming out in a week or so, week and a half.
Yeah. And also just sincere thoughts and prayers to everybody who was impacted by the American Airlines crash in DC. Happened to be many members of the ice skating community, and I didn't have a connection to that world before I became friends with Scott Hamilton, but now I do feel pretty connected to that world, and Scott has just been reeling from that. So very, very sad, and just want to give thoughts and prayers to everybody out there, and then also rest in peace to my brother. My oldest brother passed away on Tuesday, Jeff, and he was a giant in my life, and I'm definitely going to miss him, but I'm thankful he's no longer suffering. So I'm going to miss you, buddy. And thanks to Emily, who was probably the first person to know about that. And even while we were recording, texted me that she's thinking about me. So Emily, I love you. And I think that's all we got.
Yeah.